in today's webinar, there's going to be 3 different sections that we're going to go through. One is how predictive planning is integrated within the web, and then how it's integrated within SmartView, and then at the end, I'll give you 2 use cases of how to use predictive planning within a business process. So predictive planning, with the web integration, this can assist with any statistical analysis that you're doing, can help compare historical data to future data and help predict that. Can also help identify seasonality within your data set, and then accurately predict for your budget or forecast based on that historical data that you have it looking at. It can then give you a best and a worst case scenario based on historical data trends. And ultimately, hopefully this is a feature that helps you ultimately hit your goals and more accurately and quicker. So the interface here, if you've used Typerion before, we have data input forms, and predictive planning is integrated into those data input forms. So to access predictive planning, you'd open up one of your input forms and then go to the actions drop down and select predictive planning. You can then see that below your grid or input form is now the predictive planning panel. You can see the arrows here is pointing to the hardware account, and it's signifying that based on the cell that we have selected in the grid, which is under Q3 for hardware, that's why hardware is appearing down in the panel below. So this is what we're doing our analysis on. If we were to select the cell for support, that's what we'd be doing our analysis for down in the predictive planning pane. So the pane will give you a chart, and then along the right here will be some data points telling you what the prediction growth rate will be, how far or below is your prediction compared to the growth rate you're actually projecting in your forecast. So coming to the next slide here, we've just enhanced the visuals to make it bigger and larger, easier for you to see here. So taking a look at the chart above, it's made up of 2 different panels here. That blue vertical line by August 14, you can see that that's dividing the chart. The green line to the left is all your historical data, and then to the right of that blue vertical line is your prediction section. So within that, you can see various different lines going on in there, and you can see the legend is identifying those lines for you. The blue line being your prediction line that predictive planning is creating for you, and your red line being your forecast working, so what you've predicted at this point. And then you have a best and worst case scenario lines as well. Then the images below is just giving you data points for based on the chart above. So your growth rate for your prediction line, what's your growth rate based on your forecast that you have inputted already, and then what's your growth rate for best and worst case. So another way to see more data based on the prediction that predictive planning is getting us is maximizing the predictive planning window. And you can see that maximizing this window gives us 2 more charts below the graph, giving us maybe what is our seasonality, our start dates for our historical range, and then our prediction details. So how accurate is our prediction? What error measure is it using? And what's that value? The best prediction method here is the damped trend seasonal multiplicative method. Within the web integration, all methods are selected, and so it's going to cycle through all those methods and pick that best method with the least amount of, with the best accuracy, I should say. And then it also gives us what is our start date and end date that we're trying to predict. What's the month total that we're trying to predict for? And in this case, it's 12 months from July 14 to June 15. Within the predictive planning pane, you have some settings that you can also change or adjust. On the left here, you can adjust your historical range. So again, the more data that that is relevant, the more accurate your prediction is going to be. So right now, our historical range is going from FY10 to FY14. So 54 periods we're using for our historical range. and then we're using 12 periods as our prediction range. So we're predicting for 12 months total. And then on the right here, you also have some chart view settings that you can add lines or remove lines from your prediction section of the chart. Right now, we don't have the linear trend line or the growth curve line selected. So things you can adjust for your chart settings depending on your needs. Some other chart settings is you can also highlight seasonality. You can show the separator between the past and future data, that vertical blue line that I was talking about earlier. All these are selected right now. Again, you can adjust these based on your preferences, how you like to see the data in the chart. So I touched on seasonality a little bit. It's identified in the chart or the graph as these blue sections that the arrows are pointing to. This is signifying that there's a trend or seasonality in these sections. You can also see that it's displayed seasonality for 12 months. So every 12 months, there's a new trend. The chart below is not seasonal, so you don't see those blue bands signifying seasonality. So just a nice feature that it offers. There's a chart zoom button. This zooms in on the prediction section of your line graph. Just gives you more ease of seeing, all right, what is the line doing better than that just little section. You can also see easier, is my forecast within the best and worst case dotted lines. So just a nice enhancement to see the predictions section a little better. There's also object descriptions if you hover over a section of the predictive planning pane. So if you haven't used the predictive planning in a little while and forget what are the key indicators that we're looking at, you can hover over them and get a description of, all right, what is this data point or percentage giving me? What does this mean? So a nice benefit there that they've incorporated. Now here's the biggest benefit of predictive planning in my mind. So you've done your analysis, you've decided, hey, I like the prediction that they're giving me better than what I actually have as my forecast data. I'd like to maybe make that switch or use the prediction. They have a paste option where you can copy that prediction line and paste it into your forecast, whatever data that you were using. And you can copy the entire range or the first 6 months. It's really customizable here. You can also see that the members, you can also select just the current member you have selected. So in our case, it was hardware. Or you can say, I want to copy and paste that prediction for all members on my form. You can also paste the worst case or the best case. So a lot of different options here, but I think this is the biggest takeaway from this, is after doing that analysis, you can actually take that prediction data and copy it over to what your forecast scenario and version is sitting in. So a really nice feature. Another way to adjust the data in your forecast scenario would be within the chart. If you click on your forecast, in this case, forecast working line, it's going to then display the data points for each month. And you can drag and drop that line to be whatever data amount you want to change it to. So in this case, we're adjusting April 15. We're probably bringing it a little lower to be a little closer to that prediction line, since we're a little bit above it. So another way you can adjust the data within the chart.